Okay, first we're going to talk about some equities using Poker Stove. First, we're going to look at the equity of ace-queen versus a strong range. And we can see that this equity is really bad. That's going to come into play later in our discussion of 5-betting ranges. If we look at a worse hand like 7-6 suited against the same strong range, you see that hand actually does a fair amount better than ace-queen off. And if we look at ace-7 suited, we can see that also does very slightly better than ace-queen off against a very strong range. Now, if we widen that range to 4.7% of all hands in 10s plus ace-queen, we see ace-queen vaults ahead of ace-7 suited, but they still have similar equities. And looking at a more haphazard example, we see that 10-7 suited has a bit better equity than ace-queen versus a very strong range of queens plus ace-king, and a bit worse equity versus 10s plus ace-queen. So for all these examples in terms of the math, I'm going to be talking about 5-betting 100x from the small blind after a 24x 4-bet, after a 11x 3-bet, after a 3x button open. Now that may seem really complicated, but it's not. It should look like a very standard hand once the replayer gets going. In the structure, when we 3-bet fold, we have 89x. So we 3-bet to 11x from 100x. And when we 5-bet shove and he folds, we have 125x. So he put in 24x and we're in the small blind, so we have 1x in the big blind. So from 89, we get our 11x back plus 24 plus 1. When we 5-bet and he calls, we have 201x multiplied by our equity in the pot. So that's two 100x stacks plus the big blind multiplied by our equity share of the pot. So for example, if we shove and he calls and we have 45% equity, we will have 90.45x, making it plus EV, since if we had folded, we would have had 89, and 90 is more than 89. So if that's not clear to everyone, I suggest you listen to it one more time before moving forward. And the important thing to notice is that these numbers of 24 and 100 are going to vary slightly in some examples we go over, and that's going to change the math slightly, but not enough to make a huge difference. So if it's 26x and 102x, the numbers change, but not dramatically. Okay, let's take a little quiz. Question 1. When is a 5-bet for value? Is it A, when your hand is a favorite versus the villain's calling range? Is it B, when you have something like 45% equity? Or is it C, you're dog to the calling range, but you're getting enough folds to be plus EV? So that's question 1. Question 2. When is a 5-bet a bluff? Is it A, when you would rather not be called? Or is it B, when you don't have aces? Now, question 2 may seem deceptively retarded, but the answer is much closer to B than A. The reason's that when you 5-bet and get a fold, you'll be plus 36x. An easier way to think about it might be that your stack is 125x after your opponent folds. If your opponent calls, you'll have a 201x pot. To finish the all-in confrontation with 125x, you'll need 62.5% equity against the opponent's calling range.